My name is Kathleen Gill, and originally I came from Derry when I was about 13-year-old, and still went up and down to school from here. And then I could work, and of course then it was a days then when I was starting to meet boys. So I met Gerry when I was working in Katie's bar up the street here, and he was a fisherman. And because of working in the bar and going out with him, I got to know most of the fishermen and the way they had of working in that. So eventually we got married, so I knew exactly what I was taking on. At the start, it was hard because the children come along and he would be away, say, a week. And that was grand when he was living here around the coast. But whenever he started to move down to the southern end and the western end of the coast, he might have been a week, 10 days, 2 weeks away at a time, sometimes 3. So that part was hard. But I was lucky enough I had my parents, so they would give a good hand out then. And that was kind of how I got into the fishing and that. But apart from that, it was hard for a fisherman's wife. But you get used to it. And sometimes you get too used to it because you get used to your own wee routine and way of going. And then all of a sudden he'd be back and you had to work his way. So, but again, you worked around that. You would have been busy from as soon as the boats would have landed on a Friday. They'd all get changed, get the foo-foo on, and they would go into the bars for a drink and just to meet one another and talk about the fishing, how they'd all done that week, and if the money was any better, or if it wasn't. Then a Saturday again, sometimes they would have been in from the afternoon. That was just the general. They would put the suits on, the shirts and ties, and again for another jar. So the bars would have been really busy then, especially the salmon season. Katie's bar and I think Shanty too would have had a 24-hour licence, 23-hour licence. And in between the times they would go out to sea, Keely's had food. You get burgers or chicken or something like that. So they'd come in when they finished their trip out, got hot food, a drink. Then the next tide that they were going out to fish, away again. So it was constantly busy because all the boats sometimes didn't go all the time. Some would have fished some tides and others a different time. So yeah, definitely would have been busier. Now there's nobody in them. Nobody at all because there's just nobody there to keep it going or keep the businesses going. They were all affected, even the chandlery businesses and especially the shops and supermarkets, because the bigger boats, they were getting good stores that would have lasted them for a week, maybe 10 days. So you would have seen them all lined out in boxes on the floor. So there was a good spin-off from it. So that's all missing now too. There was a lot of boats here, maybe between 35 and 40. And it gave a lot of employment to the young fellas around here. But then as the restrictions and everything else came into it, the young men started drifting away into other occupations. Most of them might have moved to Australia, England, or away to sea. And you could see that it wasn't the same interest in the boats. The boats were getting older. There was no young men coming along, well, very few of them anyway, that wanted to take up that occupation because it was so hard and that they weren't getting a lot of help with it. So I've seen changes that way. And the biggest change is now that the harbour is so quiet. There's only a handful of boats. And the smaller half-deckers that are there, they are only allowed out certain times of the year, not all the time. So yes, there have been big changes, and it's a pity even the businesses, there's a spin-off. You can see that they're not doing as well as they were. So big changes all round. At that stage, I knew he was ready to give it up. It was very, very stressful on him, especially when it came into using the logbooks and having to make sure that they were filled in all the time. That was an added stress, and some of the equipment in the boats all started to get computerised and things like that. He never would have been used with that, so he found that a great difficulty. Plus the restrictions. The restrictions was the biggest one, and you trying to pay for the boat, make sure the men got a wage. It was really a hard time for him now. So I could see that he just wanted to wash his hands of it, get out, he'd had enough. And I would have backed him for that, because it was nice to watch somebody that loved going to fish and then all of a sudden it changed. Wasn't it the nice life that it was at all? It was hard. But when he would have been away fishing for the 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and at night I wouldn't have been a great sleeper. So I just used to have a pad and a pencil beside me and just think on these things, and I'd say, oh, I could write a wee thing about that, and I would jot something down, and then it just came then that if something came into my head like that, I enjoyed doing it. So that's just how that came about. Well, this is the first one I wrote, must have been well over 20 years ago. It's called A Fisherman's Memories. This small, quiet village, so peaceful and serene, ebbs a seafaring history on each tide that has been. To recall rugged faces, their names bring a smile. The stories they told you made you linger a while. Cannings, McCormick's, Kavanagh's too, Kelly's and Farn's, to name but a few. A hard life was fishing in an open, drunken boat. No shelter above them, just a black oilskin coat. To row around Shrove Head was no easy task. Then begin baiting fish hooks and shoot the line fast. No hot food to heat them on cold winter days. Those hardy old sailors battled on through the waves. Hauling the catch, this all done by hand. Then row again homeward to their folk anxious on land. The seasons of herring and salmon now gone. Ready the sails for regatta, now the rowings for fun. Scotch visitors here, a song and a stout. Many's a tale then told from those characters about. Then in came the engines, out went the sails. Decked boats with wheelhouses to weather the gales. The sons of the fathers now taking the wheel. The vessels being built now have a much longer keel, with sonars and radars, navigational aids. The Drontham and Joel from the memory fades. For on local waters the fish have dispersed. Our trawlers must steam further, a catch for the search. In days gone by, each trip took a day, but today fishermen spend from 4 to 10 away. I know these old mariners would surely agree as they watch these fine trawlers head out to sea. There's a beauty about them as they rise in the swell. When the sea's in your blood, your soul you would sell to work aboard a boat once more, but this time pull no heavy oar. Then watch and wonder in the modern age, but fondly remember as the Drontham fades. That's that. Like that, it was just reminiscing back on the way things were and the things in the museum here. The way the men went out in open boats and the weather they would have had to put up with. And they didn't have any wheelhouses or no shelter of any kind, no engines. It must have been a really hard life. And if you see in the history upstairs and that, there was a big drowning. I think there was 47, so many boats lost a long time ago. So just thinking of things like that would put things in my head. This poem is about, say, the skipper, as he goes down and gets the boat ready and he starts heading off on his trip down the river. It's kind of what he sees and what's in his mind. Not that I would have a real clue, but just from listening to what them what they're talking about in it. So kind of that's where this one comes from. Good watch and good fishing. Ropes are cast off, the fenders are in. The trawler makes ready her trip to begin. Past Seagull Rock, Carry village shop, ferryport, away from Larry. Colloway's portside, Dog Hill, Warren Light, Metal Man, Port Sala, Shrewve Lighthouse in sight. Our course on the plotter now, northward bound. Round Donagree, past the Doris, Inishowen Head, Culdaff Bay, Glengad Head, steam on for the Stanton ground. A radio shout from Malin Coastguard as the crew head to bed. Good watch and good fishing, fair weather ahead. Light is now fading, the land dips from view. Lights from the houses now thin to a few. Innistrahull once lived on, now dark and forlorn. The lighthouse still flashes, the ship's for to warn. Tea for the skipper helps to keep him awake, as his thoughts now firmly on haddock and hake. Dawn breaks on the skyline, a shout to the crew. Up and look lively, lads, there's plenty to do. Cook has the fry ready, men need to be fed. Shooting nets and boarding, gutting too lies ahead. Long hours of towing, no time for sleep. Marks checked on the wires before the warp sinks. The trawl door and doors slip into the net. Wrong way around. The trawl net and doors slip into the deep. We'll fill her today, boss, someone says with a wink. Gear weighted down, bunts and bobbins galore. Finally hit the seabed, the ground to explore. No peaks to snag on, no gear to go fast. Torn nets and lost gear cause debts to amass. Trawl doors keep the net open so fish will swim in. The cod end now filling, this race they can't win. A weather-beaten face from the window appears. Wind, sun and salt water, furrowed lines, aged with years. Time to haul, boys. Let's hope she's full. The winch heaves the net upward and strains with a pull. Gannets and gulls swoop and dive from the sky. In search of a morsel, again and again they will try. Some do get lucky and rise up with a fish. Lovely sight to witness as they play hit or miss. Up comes the cod end. Not a bad catch. Skipper writes in his notebook, remember this patch. Then calls up the co-op. What's the prices like today? Not bad, says the boss man, but steam ashore right away. The crew now smiling as they head for the pier. Land the catch, wash and shave, maybe go for a beer. Back to work the next morning, no nets to mend. All on board, ready the boat, and do it all over again.